Great. We are live. And Patrick, I really appreciate you joining today. I'm excited to talk a little bit about what you do, learn a little bit about what you do, and just run through all things cybersecurity, and particularly in the school space. I think that's going to be super interesting. So would love for you to just kind of get started here by doing a brief intro of yourself, as well as Dark Knight and everything that you guys do.
Yeah, well, I appreciate being here. First live stream, so see how it goes. But yeah, so I'm Patrick. I'm the lead cybersecurity advisor for my company, Dark Knight Solutions. At this point, I'm a bit of a security journeyman. I had a career in the Army as an infantry officer, did a lot of security in the hands-on sense, and ended up out of the military not knowing what I was going to do with this liberal arts degree that I had. And always been kind of a closet nerd, techie. And I, like 2009, discovered I could go back to school for IT security at the time. And I'm like, well, that sounds kind of neat. And that really set me on this path that I started in the IT ranks doing help desk and system administration, and then transitioned into being like a pen tester or a consultant, going out and hacking into small banks, credit unions, hospitals. Eventually worked for some big companies, Target, Best Buy, Cargill.
Yeah.
And along the way, I ended up working at the St. Paul Public School District, and my former boss went to another school district in the Twin Cities Metro in Minnesota. And I went back to Best Buy in the private sector, and he said, hey, I can't afford to hire you, but if me and my friends at other school districts pool our resources together, can we buy you part-time, basically? This is about 10 years ago. And I said, oh, well, you know what? I have this LLC, Dark Knight Solutions. I think I can help you. So I came up with the security consortium service that I have built up, and that's how I got my start in helping K-12.
Yeah. Well, that's super cool. I want to get into that in a minute, and I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about how that works. But you mentioned something along the way of like kind of going to school for cybersecurity and whatnot. And I know there's actually some, I guess, torn opinions on whether school is necessary or whether you should do kind of like a class or an online course or whatnot. What are your opinions on that, especially working in the education space to some capacity? How do you feel about, education for cybersecurity through a formal 4-year degree versus doing some classes?
What I know is there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
There is a hurdle of a lot of cybersecurity positions still to this day. It was like this 8 years ago, or more than that. I'm dating myself. You couldn't get into cybersecurity in an entry level position without 5 years of experience.
Yeah.
Where you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. But what I noticed is a lot of the companies, minus a few that have like a degree requirement in the job posting, a lot of times you're evaluating the candidates, because I've been on the hiring manager side of, do they have an education?
Yeah.
What is the specialty or the degree in? Do they have certifications? Do they have projects that they've done on the side? And then what's their experience? And you're really looking at a blend. Some of the best cybersecurity folks that I worked with had a degree in English, political science. Like, they weren't technical degrees.
Yeah.
So I don't think the degree matters as much per se. It helps.
Yeah.
I think going through like a 4-year program may position you for those entry-level security roles a little bit better than the 5 years of experience, because you can make up for it with, oh, you've got a bachelor's in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, if you enjoy this field and you want to get into it, anything you want to pursue in terms of that interests you, that sparks your passion, a side project, spinning up stuff in your home lab, joining a local networking or professional group, chasing some certifications or trainings that are fun, like, they all can help you in your career. I think it's very much a choose your own adventure, I think.
Yeah. It's a fun career. I know a few people that have kind of started to dive into that recently, and I'm not a cybersecurity specialist myself. I consider myself an IT generalist, and so it's always fun to hear opinions from people who have really narrowed down into a specific niche like that. And so that's interesting. Yeah, I fully agree with you on my side from what I've seen for IT in general, as well as just cybersecurity. It really depends on the situation. Certainly the degree can help, but but obviously not necessary in several cases. And there's some people who just really get into the nitty gritty with the computer and start to learn a lot on their own, and then it's a good fit. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think what gets underestimated is it's the soft skills from a career perspective that can influence or help you get to where you want to go. Because
Yeah.
cybersecurity is a lot of times it's not what the company's there to do. So
Yeah.
like in school districts, like they're not there to be the Fort Knox of IT and computer network security,
Yeah.
right? They're there to educate kids. So if you get into a meeting where you're trying to get changes made in the classroom to improve security, but you can't recognize that what you're recommending is going to make it harder for that teacher because their computer locks out every 5 minutes,
Yep.
you're going to have a hard time kind of being in those roles in security where you have to figure out how do you navigate the landscape and the culture and what your organization does to
Yeah.
influence getting the changes you want to improve security. So being able to hold the conversation, hear from folks, listen in the moment. There's a lot of soft skills that can help you progress in cybersecurity that often aren't really taught, that I think are really helpful too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super cool. Well, I'd love to kind of talk through some of the security consortium, if you will, like for you to kind of define that and talk through it. I know really the idea behind it is that a lot of cybersecurity frameworks will assume that you've got like this huge team and a giant budget that you can allocate and pay all this money for. And that's just not the case for several people. So walk us through, I guess, what you do and how that works and why the consortium that you built operates well and is really good for, these types of schools, nonprofits, and anything in between.
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with what I'm trying to solve.
Yeah.
You have these organizations that there's a professional named Wendy Nather that came up with the saying of the security poverty line.
Okay.
You have all these organizations that can't afford the resources that best practices recommend organizations do. And over the years, I started to realize that these best practices are really, they're a camel, which is a horse built by a committee.
Yeah.
These best practices are established by auditors, they're established by folks who have done security, folks that have done IT, but sometimes they lose the groundedness of like, well, what does it actually mean to be secure?
Sure.
So I took that and said, you know what? It's a flawed model for these organizations below the poverty line. They can't have somebody like myself full time.
Yep.
But I think there's hope because I've assessed and audited so many small organizations, like small banks, where I'm like, you have a really secure network. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
And then when I studied breaches over the years in the threat intelligence space, it was the same reasons that organizations were being breached, and they weren't flashy.
Yeah.
It's the same things over and over again, these good IT practices that are actually good security. So I took all that and said, okay, how can I help these IT directors in these school districts improve their security for the things that really matter and do it in a way that I'm not there 8 hours a day?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had participated in a lot of these information sharing groups on the threat intelligence side, where I collaborated with other cybersecurity professionals from big retailers, big manufacturers, banks. And what I noticed is we spent a lot of time collaborating on stuff that it didn't really move the needle from a security perspective.
Sure.
And I said, how do I change the discussion for these school districts with my service of, let's talk about the things that really matter. How are they improving their security? What are the things that they already have the tools on the IT side to do? They just need somebody to help nudge them or guide them in the right direction of like, here's how you can use what you have to improve your security that isn't going to jump off the page in a best practice.
Yeah.
So that's where I put the framework together, where the key piece is I need to have trust, because I want to crowdsource. I want them to help each other.
Yeah.
Because part of what security is about is educating. I'm a firm believer that if you explain why we need to do the things we need to do in cybersecurity, it goes a long ways. Because once folks understand the why, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Granted, sometimes it may be the price is too high for the risk you're mitigating, but in general, a lot of the folks, they want to do the right thing when it comes to security. They just need a little help in hand. So I put these teams across multiple school districts into private groups, and I coach them. I call it coaching because I think that's more of the leadership style versus a consultant's kind of coming in and saying, here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
I want security to be their journey. It's their decisions. And part of security is about ownership. You have to own, like, this is my organization's data. This is my network. These are my tools. And a lot of the folks that I work with they're in K-12 because they want to be, which is awesome. They're passionate. They enjoy what they do. It's actually pretty high pressure, believe it or not, but they embrace it. So that's an awesome foundation for security, because then that means they're going to take pride in what they do, and they don't want to have a security issue. They don't want to have a breach.
Yeah.
So to get folks collaborating, the most important thing to me is you got to establish trust within the group that you are collaborating with.
Yeah.
A lot of these groups I've seen, they start to fail because it's a little bit of a poker game where it's like, I want to learn from you all, but I'm not going to tell you anything, right? Like, I'm not going to show you my cards.
Yeah.
So that's like the big hurdle I try to navigate of, I prepare the agendas and content each meeting that they participate in, not to like control, but to help have icebreakers, help establish a routine. So folks are like, oh yeah, I'm going to come prepared to this meeting to talk about my vulnerability management, or any alerts that we had, right? Because you don't get to trust in 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. It takes a couple months and a couple goes before finally somebody's like, you know what? We're having this problem that we can't solve. What are you all doing to solve it?
Yep.
And that's when you start to really unlock the real collaboration, the stuff that really improves security. And it's not just folks, having a professional meetup once a month.
Yeah. I think it's exciting when things start to actually move. And I am curious too, maybe a couple of like the success stories that you've experienced. I'd love to hear some, and obviously sometimes you may just not know what breaches you've protected from because you may never. What are some success stories that you've seen, maybe from people who have just finally let their guard down to allow someone to coach them on how cybersecurity works?
Yeah. Well, I think one really cool success story that I thought was more interesting than my customers probably.
Yeah.
So 6 of my districts were going on over 8 years.
Yeah.
And so when COVID hit and we had the work from home or the lockdowns happen, you had these K-12 IT teams that had to go from minimal remote workers. Like, they didn't have a lot of VPN usage because most folks were coming into the district locations.
Yep.
So not only did they have to quickly go from implementing remote work for their employees and the staff, they also had to transition to remote learning for all the students.
Yeah.
So pick one of those, and that's a challenge, right? But with the monthly consortium that they were a part of, and my ability to kind of coach and guide them, is it just got put on the monthly agenda. It said, hey, where are you at with your work from home setup? And we were able to actually help them do that in a secure manner.
Yeah.
So, right, you talk about high stress situations, like, it was already stressful, but now security wasn't like, it was another factor to plan for, but it wasn't like this burden. At least, again, they might say otherwise, since I'm the advisor or the coach. But we're able as a group to say, hey, what are you doing are you letting people print at home? Because now you have sensitive documents being printed. Do you have any controls for if they're using cloud storage like Dropbox and Google Drive? Are you using multi-factor authentication? Are you locking down your Zoom or your virtual conferencing? Because Zoom bombing was that thing.
Yep.
That's happened, right? So that was really a great win because it was a stressful situation that was a little less stressful, but they're able to do it in a secure manner and minimize a lot of those hiccups that come along with it.
Yeah. That's super cool. I mean, I'm even thinking about like the printing at home. For me, that would be an oversight because again, IT generalist, not cybersecurity specialist. It's like something very niche to think about is when people take their computer home, are they printing stuff out that may have sensitive data? And so that's fascinating. And I think just the fact that you were able to be there as almost like an accountability partner in a way of like, hey, are we moving this project along? That's probably that alone was probably worth every penny that they were paying to you to make sure to get that, all taken care of as things are moving forward. So that's really cool. Yeah.
That's one of my former customers. He used to describe it just like you said. He's like, he viewed this group as like his accountability to go to the gym.
Oh yeah.
Like he didn't want to show up to these meetings not prepared because his peers that he looks up to and trusts potentially are doing the work. So he doesn't want to be like the lowest notch on the totem pole.
Yeah.
So I found it's a really good, like healthy form of accountability. Because what I tell my customers at the end of the day, the only wrong thing you can do in security is to do nothing.
Yeah.
As long as you are making incremental improvements on some basis, like it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't even have to be every month. Like right now, I know they're ramping up because staff are already back. Some schools are starting up. Like, hopefully no bad security incidents happen. But like I fully understand you're not going to be doing a lot of like proactive improvements in your security between now and the middle of September, maybe even October.
Yeah.
But when October rolls around, let's pick it back up a few security, items and start making that progress. And I think just knowing that is helpful because the best practices can get really overwhelming that you feel like, holy cow, I can't do all of this stuff. So cutting through that and just realizing like it's more about progress than anything.
Yeah. And having someone to lay that out like you too, to put everything into place and say, hey, here's a couple of things you can work on right now. A couple of more simple things while things are busy. And then once school's out, you got a little extra time to breathe, maybe take care of some of those more complex projects. I think that's cool too. Building a roadmap, coaching through that. I mean, that's incredibly helpful. And I think it's kind of funny, the natural gamification of the process too, with what you're saying about the peers that are, jumping in there together and, you don't want to fall behind. I think that's really, really neat. So one of the questions I ask often to guests, because the space that I work in, several of the churches, schools, or nonprofits that we work with, they're low on funds. And so what suggestions would you have to prioritize IT or cybersecurity and specific cybersecurity needs when everything seems urgent, but there's not enough money? What are some of the things that you would say to a client or someone who needs to get this taken care of that doesn't really have the funding for it?
Yeah. Well, for starters, I usually try to meet folks where they are. So like that question can, on surface level, it might kind of feel like, oh, it's the same thing. Like we don't have enough money. We don't have enough funds. But sometimes there's more to that in terms of like, well, is it really a funding issue for some things? Like maybe it's only $2,000, but what you found is your decision maker in your organization won't even approve $2,000 because they actually don't understand what it's for. Like,
yeah.
So what I try to really do is start to kind of break that question down with who's asking it to understand a little bit more of like where they're at, what have they run into in terms of roadblocks or challenges with this topic, for starters. But then going back to just, there's a lot of things that I usually do in terms of like, let's get an inventory of what you currently have in place. Like start simple. Like, can you reach out and touch your devices? Like, can you essentially manage your devices? Or do you have an MSP or an IT provider who does that for you?
Yeah.
Like, cool. Like hopefully it's yes, Because as long as you have that capability, more or less, even if it's somebody running around the office with the 5 computers, technically you have the means to reach out and physically manage those devices.
Yep.
So I start there and let them understand, like, that's an IT capability that you have, but we can use that for security. Because now we can figure out, are you patching? Are you deploying the OS patches? Or is it set to auto? Are you updating your browsers? So, or is your vendor, your MSP, doing that for you?
Sure.
So I kind of start working through the inventory of, here's the good IT practices that are going to improve your security that odds are almost any organization can figure out. Can they apply patches?
Yeah.
Right. Again, it doesn't have to be every week, every month. It's about, how do you get on some type of periodic basis that just gets you to reduce that exposure window.
Yeah.
A lot of them, you should have some type of firewall network equipment. Right. So we can start with those basic things, and it's almost, we don't even talk about the funding issue, because it's like, well, we're going to start with what you have.
Yeah.
So that's usually how I go about it. And then the biggest funding issue that I've seen is more around the lines of, there's a straight up capability called detection and response.
Yep.
Can you detect suspicious, malicious, bad activity within your network, on your devices, within your user accounts? That capability is actually really hard to implement. Even in big companies, they hire teams of anywhere from 3 to 50 plus employees whose job it is to just do that.
Yeah.
Right. Those security operation centers.
Yep.
So usually that's where the funding piece is the biggest one, where we have to talk about that. We have to eat that elephant. Because it's a big ticket item too. Like, there's a few vendors that might be pretty closer to affordable, I'd say, but it's still going to be a big investment. Cheap. It's not cheap. And so what I found is, knock on wood, all of my customers, we found the way to get the funding.
Yeah.
There's always a different way to just understand, like, how are you approaching the problem? You can talk from a risk perspective. What's our exposure? What type of attacks are we most prevalent for?
Yep.
So without even spending a lot of time, you can sit down and say, well, everybody's basically a victim or a potential target for opportunistic ransomware actors.
Yeah.
Like, the city of St. Paul's having an incident, and went on to the dark web and was analyzing that ransomware group's site, could see the organizations they claim to have breached, and, like, just reviewing in a sample of those, I could tell, like, there's hospitals, there's school districts, there's construction firms, legal firms. Like, it's not as if they're coming after these organizations because of who they are. It's these generic type of attacks that they're spamming, they're casting a wide net. But where I'd get back to is, like, okay, so if you're really concerned about ransomware, we can kind of work through the things you can do with the IT tools to prevent that from happening, in terms of locking all the doors and latching all the windows. But we have to talk about, if your security tools are doing what they're doing, some of those tools, like your antivirus or endpoint detection and response, is there to alert a human. Hey, something suspicious is going on. And unfortunately, that's a really time-intensive workflow. Like, that's why there are cybersecurity folks who specialize in just triaging and investigating those alerts.
Sure.
So, because the sooner you can nip those in the bud on the endpoint, you probably have prevented a worse type of breach from happening. You'll never know it. But the more you can reduce your containment to the front lines, essentially, you're going to probably keep yourself out of the ransomware events.
Yeah.
So when we talk through that exposure in a risk perspective, then we can start to have a little bit more general conversations of, like, hey, here's typically how these actors are getting in. Based on the technology you have, if these systems were gone and this data is basically encrypted and extorted, are you comfortable with, like, that type of exposure?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the kind of verbiage or, protocol that sometimes directors of operations or executive directors or principals or superintendents, like, we can start to meet them where they are and speak the same language and talk about why. And then we can get into the funding side of like, okay, what are the two options we have to solve this? And is it an affordable option?
Yeah. I like that because I think it relates to the decision maker. It allows them to understand the purpose behind it. And you said something that really struck me with just kind of a little bit of awe, and actually what is really a great question, which was like, it might be $2,000, but they may not know what it's for. So asking like, what is this for, and how do we relay that to the person who's making that decision on the funding? And so I think that's a really important piece, is accurately and concisely explaining that to the person who needs to make that decision for the funding. So, yeah.
Well, cybersecurity, unless you work at a cybersecurity firm, it's all overhead cost.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day.
Yep.
Like at the retailers I worked at, it was always, we kind of joke like, well, this is how many things of toilet paper need to get sold in order to pay for the security tool.
Yep.
Or how many TVs do we have to sell to make up the cost of, our salaries and the work that we do.
Yeah.
So when you start to transition or translate it into the business terms, like, you start to realize like, oh, I love cybersecurity, but from a organizational perspective, like, is what I'm proposing going to make teaching students that much better in the classroom?
Yep.
May or may not. Like, the reality is not all of the things we propose in cybersecurity are great ideas for what the organizations do. So.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, it keeps them running, because a breach may not be too fun. And so that's really cool. You were mentioning too some of the detection and response tools. What are you seeing in the market? Do you have any opinions on some of the tools that are out there? Which ones do you, I guess, like? Maybe not recommend, but which ones do you make for schools or nonprofits and operations?
Well, one, I like any tool that they can afford.
Yes.
Like, when a lot of times folks say, well, what's the best antivirus product?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? It's whatever antivirus product you can deploy on 100% of your devices.
Yeah.
Like if you have the best antivirus product, but it's only on 95% of your devices and 5% of your environment is 10, 15, 20 devices, that's actually a bigger deal than whether or not the quality, right?
Yeah.
But that aside, what I tend to look for with not just the detection and response, but vendors in general, is I want them to be a partner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Having been on the buying side and being on the blue team and working in these companies, like, I am expending a lot of my own like political and emotional capital in an organization to request the funding that we just talked about, right?
Yep.
I just beat the drum and laid my heart out there to say, hey, CFO, here's why I need $150,000 this year.
Yeah.
And if I give that to this vendor and they come in and they don't deliver, or when I really need them because their product broke, I need to know that they're going to be right there with me and they're going to like embrace the fact that like we're in this together. It's not, oh, the customer opened the ticket and we'll get to it, based on our priority.
Yeah.
So I really like to look for vendors that are going to partner, especially when you have these IT teams that don't have the cybersecurity expertise. A lot of these vendors sell a pretty complicated product.
Yeah.
Right. So regardless of who you get, you can outsource your 24/7 monitoring, but at the end of the day, SOC analysts are still not going to be intimate enough with your environment to know, can I or can I not contain or knock this laptop off the network to quarantine it? You may give them permission to do that, but a lot of organizations, you don't want them to just take the principal or the superintendent's network or computer right off the network, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times these vendors are going to pass over the alerts to the IT staff that thought they're freeing themselves up from security with this vendor. But in return, the vendor's actually making more work for them because they're going to be the recipients of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I look for, is how well are they going to help educate the customer? Like, we're going to send you these alerts and they look pretty technical, and we might not give you enough context of like what you should do with it, but are they going to be able to field those questions and talk customers through that if they have those questions? I think some factors that help is also like how they deploy their tools. So like Red Canary is a company whose model is more about integrations. They plug in the APIs of your security tools, your IT systems, and they pull what they need into their platform.
Yeah.
Love that, because you don't have to deploy a bunch of stuff, which
Yeah.
for these IT teams and low resource orgs, like that's huge.
Yeah.
So I like the vendors that are thinking about it a little differently.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, there's a great vendor like Arctic Wolf, who's a little bit more traditional in terms of deploying virtual machines, deploying sensors, agents.
Yep.
But they do it in such a well-packaged way that the onboarding is a little bit of work, but it's much more of that left seat, right seat ride. So those are two that I've seen a lot of customers enjoy. I got another handful of customers that really like Rapid7's MDR solution.
Yeah.
It's great product. The team really goes above and beyond in terms of giving the customers almost more information than you can process. But yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's going to sound a lot cooler in my head than it's going to sound coming out here. But I'm thinking like when you're evaluating endpoint detection and response, you need to pay attention to your vendor selection and wants.
It's such a tough field to navigate because the industry as a whole, there's so much jargon.
Yeah.
Like this vendor's a SOC as a service. Oh, this vendor's managed detection and response.
What does it actually mean? I mean, sometimes that means a completely different thing from one vendor to another.
Oh yeah, I've had some sales engineers actually kind of get a little chippy with me, where I'm like, "Well, you're a SOC as a service." No, we're MDR. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
Well, it seems to be that there's almost actual terminology when it comes out of that, which is funny.
Yeah, so that's actually another, going back to this is like 2021. So I do a summer workshop for my school districts, and in 2021, the whole day was about ransomware.
Oh, wow.
Because like part of what I try to do is plan ahead so they're not reacting.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the planning cycle to get the funding to buy a $150,000, $250,000, vendor could be 2-3 years in the makings, because you have to like educate upwards, get folks to understand, right? That whole conversation that we talked about having about funding doesn't just happen in 2 weeks. Like sometimes it's a multi-year, like
presented part of over and over and over again.
Yeah. Or like the security journey of like, you're educating folks on like what it means to have a security program before you even get to the point of like, look, we've got to talk about our exposure to ransomware.
Yeah.
Or the insurance providers' applications are great for driving that, because the writing was on the wall that if you didn't have 24/7 monitoring, odds are you're not going to qualify for your cyber insurance policies anymore.
Yep.
So we went through that workshop, talk about ransomware. Well, the follow-up then was like helping my customers, like, how do we navigate the MDR, the SOC, the EDR, all these vendors in the jargon? How do we navigate that in our RFPs to know like what is it that we think is best for our district? So that was another example of like, that's what we had talked to month over month, was how is everybody's RFPs going? What questions do you have? I prepare content that I make available in my security document library to help educate folks on navigating that. So,
yeah, I think that's actually a really good segue into kind of some final questions here. Notably with kind of the library that you got and everything. I guess how can viewers connect with you to learn more, to maybe, become a client, which would be great. And kind of what kind of final thoughts would you have for the audience as we're going here?
Yeah. Well, I start out like, I do what I do with my company because I like the idea of proving the industry wrong in terms of like, I think folks that I call them, everyday defenders, they're IT professionals that are bearing the responsibility for their org security. Like, I think there's a really good chance that you can stay out of the news. You can improve your security enough. You just need a little guidance and a little encouragement sometimes to keep going. So I've been working really hard to basically offer kind of something for everybody.
Yeah.
So I've got the entry level, if folks are just interested in like being in a community of fellow like IT professionals that are securing school districts, nonprofits, small and medium-sized businesses. I've got a community offering where you can jump in there. I post content. I answer questions that come up. Every customers ask each other questions. So that's like my lowest cost to entry of it's only a few $100s for an annual subscription. So that they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, either my page or me directly or my website, and set up time with me with my booking link.
Yeah.
But from there, I have kind of packages of you pay a little bit more and then you get access to the document library that has all the templates and content to help them jumpstart their security program. They can get into different tiers where the monthly meetings, if they want to meet with just all nonprofits, I kind of put them in one big group. If they want to have a more private group of like 4 or 5 other nonprofits that they want to have as like their personal cohort, that have those more intimate settings, that's another tier. And all those tiers basically come with a retainer rate that I provide that is very, very affordable. Like a third of what you'd pay for some of the big consulting companies, but it's because I'd rather work with folks and help them. And if I do the right thing, I'm optimistic my business will be fine. So
definitely.
Yeah.
And what is your website for anybody who's watching?
Just www.darknightsolutions.com.
Sweet. Awesome.
Find me there, or trying to kind of get out on LinkedIn a little bit more and get the brand established and dialogue with folks on there.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, that's amazing, man. I really appreciate the time today, and it was fun chatting with you. And I'm looking forward to continuing to stay in touch here and to serve clients well and make sure that everybody's cyber safe. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed being here. I enjoy the work that you do, and I think it's a fun space to be helping folks that really need the help. That means a lot more to me than anything else. So
I'm with you on that. Awesome. Well, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.